Hi, everyone. Welcome back. Nice to have you here. Thanks for coming back and joining us. It's May. We have been sheltering in place now for quite a number of weeks, and probably will continue to be sheltering in place for some time to come. At least those of us in California will be doing that. I wanted to talk today about the power of choice. I've been thinking about choice quite a bit in the last few years. My latest book is titled "All Is Chosen," and the heart of that book has everything to do with choice and our capacity to choose, and the impact of our choices on our experience of life, and the realization that it truly is a power when we are consciously choosing, not hoping for, not trying to make happen, but consciously choosing. There's a tremendous power for manifestation, if you will, that's available to us. It's always available to us. We just don't have the habitual tendency to be coming from that particular place of choice, that particular place of power. And it has everything to do with being present in the moment with no attention paid to thinking from the past, only focusing on where one is in the present moment and consciously choosing the thoughts of what we want. You know, the question was asked me many years ago from a teacher I had. How much do we pay attention to what we don't want? And how much do we pay attention to what we do want? So it's a very interesting question, because if you really take a moment to think about that, you'll start to see that our tendency as human beings is to pay attention to what we don't want. We actually start thinking about the possibilities that we are concerned could happen in the future. So even though the future is not happening now, if you really think about that, the future never happens. The future is only when we get to the future, if you will, we're actually in the present moment of now. So the future is often filled with possibilities of things we're concerned about. And one of the things that I think is really happening to us now, and something we are suffering from now, is the way that we are constantly talking about this virus that we are dealing with. So there's a definite physical threat from this virus, but there's also a mental threat. There's a mental virus that is actually creating a lot more suffering than we need to be experiencing. So if you're someone who is watching the news constantly, or watching the news more than just the little bit of time you need to watch it to stay present to what's happening and what you need to know to protect yourself and sort of keep abreast of the circumstances. If you're watching it for longer than that, it's very possible that you are connecting to an invisible mindset of mass consciousness that is very concerned and fearful about what is going to happen because of this virus. For example, am I going to get sick? Is someone I love going to get sick? Is this ever going to end? Are we ever going to get back to the way things used to be? What will the new normal look like? Those kinds of thoughts that actually we can't answer right now, but we certainly can think about. And when we think about them, we start worrying. And when we start worrying, we are actually paying a lot of attention to what we don't want. The thing that happens to us is that when we start paying attention to what we don't want and we start paying attention to worrying, you see, we think that if we worry, that we're actually doing something, that it demonstrates how responsible we are, that we care about something, and we're concerned about something that we actually can't address. If we were to become sick, we would actually have a circumstance that we could take action on in that particular moment. But if we're fine and we aren't actually sick, worrying about being sick is actually creating a suffering that we aren't actually dealing with. And we are creating a circumstance to be worried about that we actually can't take any action on. The reason we can't take action on it is it's actually not happening now. So if you look around the room you're in and you see that it's exactly the same way that it was before you started worrying, nothing has changed. The only thing that has changed is you're thinking about the situation. The only action you can take, which is actually the most powerful action you could take, I've said this before, is to stop paying attention to that thinking. If the best you can do is to get up and move around, let's say it's 2 a.m. and you've woken up and you can't get back to sleep because you're concerned about someone you love getting sick or what could possibly happen with this virus, the best thing to do might be to get up, make yourself a cup of tea, take your mind off of this kind of thinking, read a book, play solitaire, shift your attention from that thinking so that you allow yourself to get back to the fact that you're probably really exhausted and need some good sleep. That would be consciously choosing to disrupt the attention that you are paying on the thinking as you're lying in bed not sleeping. Thinking about these things that concern you, consciously choosing to get up and stop thinking about it, paying attention to something else, making that cup of tea. There's real power in that kind of choosing, and that kind of choosing is always available to us. We can start to choose to pay attention to the quality of our thinking. If you find yourself feeling anxious, see if you can take a moment to really consider the thinking that's going on in your mind that you're paying attention to. And consider that if you're worried, if you're feeling anxious and you notice that you're paying attention to worrisome thoughts, remember that the body can't distinguish between an actual threat and a threat that's created by your thinking. The body reads that as a reason to be alarmed. Feelings are the way the body experiences thought. Emotions and feelings are thought in action. And the body doesn't distinguish between what's actually happening and what you think is happening. So a lot of the anxiety and fear that we are experiencing is actually self-generated. And it's smoke and mirrors. It's not really happening. We are torturing ourselves with a quality of thinking that we might not even recognize as thought. If I am paying attention to the news and the newscaster is talking about this pandemic with the kind of drama that newscasters maybe have to, because it's their job to do this, and I start getting alarmed because I'm listening to the words they're saying to me, which are alarming, and it's creating alarming thoughts in my thinking, like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize that was happening. Oh my gosh, maybe that's going to happen here. Then the body starts to resonate to the information it's getting. Oh my goodness, something's happening. Something maybe could be happening. I better be on alert. Consider distinguishing what thinking you're paying attention to. The other thing that happens with this is when we start going into that worrisome thought pattern, you actually start to tap into the race consciousness. And the majority of human beings are afraid right now. Fear seems to be the vehicle through which conversation is traveling. And and a lot of our exhaustion, maybe sleeping longer than normal when you can't sleep, a lot of the stress that we're feeling is actually tapping into the consciousness of humanity, which is essentially infused with fear. So the more each one of us can distinguish those kind of thoughts and consciously choose to be thinking thoughts that are more just being really seeing what is happening now. All is well now. Or even if you are dealing with the illness, paying attention to what you have to do now to take care of yourself. Paying attention to if you are healthy, continuing to do the things that we need to be doing, socially distancing, washing your hands. They tell us to be overly cautious because there's so much unknown with this virus. I mean, honestly, it's a time of uncertainty which has all of us standing in the unknown, and we don't like standing in the unknown. We like to make believe we know. But if you really take a look, we've always been standing in uncertainty. I mean, we take our lives in our hands every time we get in a car and drive somewhere. And there's no guarantee there's no safety net in our health. There's no safety net in our finances. There's no safety net in our relationships. There's no guarantees anywhere. But we don't tend to really get present to that because we want to enjoy our life. But if we can actually start to realize that this pandemic we're dealing with is confronting us with a reality that we've actually always had to deal with, we just didn't have to be so conscious about it, we might actually find a place of peace and a place of rest. Peace of mind is really what we are seeking right now. And we are unwittingly creating suffering for ourselves by paying attention to thinking that is fear-based and not necessarily actually what's happening. So consider in this month the power of choice, and consider taking a moment to look and see, what is the thinking I am paying attention to? And what reaction is that? What response in my body is that creating? Is it possible for me to turn my attention away from the things that I am worried about that are creating fear? And is it possible to turn my attention to being present here now and allowing the peace of this moment to infuse me and inform me of the wisdom of whatever next step I need to take? I hope this was helpful. I wish you all well. I ask you to consider to clear your head of thought and practice not thinking and just being present in the moment, and give yourself a break and see that you actually have the power to choose to be free from suffering. It takes something. It's a practice. But there is a place to stand where you can have peace of mind, even now in the midst of this. I wish you well. I look forward to next time. Take good care.